All right, guys, my special guest today is Scott Ritter. He's a former U.S. Marine intelligence officer, a former UN Special Commissions weapons inspector, and he's also an author. Let me go ahead and bring him in. Welcome back, Scott.
Hey, sorry about this. We are having a heat wave here in New York, and I think all of suburban Albany has tried to turn on their air conditioning, and it collapsed the power grid, and it's been coming on and off. So I can't guarantee continued connectivity. So if in the middle of this the screen goes blank, it's just because somebody turned on one too many air conditioning units in New York.
My God, no, it is really hot outside. That's what I was just telling people earlier. Like, this is unusual for June.
Yeah, it's hot. I feel I'm thankful right now. I mean, I'm guilty. I just turned on the air conditioning, because if you don't turn on the air conditioning, the house becomes a sweltering box. But the people that leave their animals outside on days like this, don't please bring them in because it's too hot. Even the squirrels are panting. I watched the squirrels on the trees this morning. They're just, it's too hot. It's too hot.
I hear you. Well, Scott, last time you were here, it was interesting because I remember you announced that you were going to be traveling to Russia for the St. Petersburg Expo. And I remember saying to you, I said, are you concerned about going to Russia? Because I know a couple of journalists that have been detained, like Fiorella and Kit Clarenberg. And then lo and behold, you are on the plane on your way to Russia. And then I see this announcement from Sputnik that says Scott Ritter was removed from the plane. And I was like, what is going on? So I know like a lot of people want to hear about that. What exactly happened that day?
Hey, what happened that day is I showed up at the airport, scheduled flight with my valid passport, with a valid visa, having informed the U.S. government in advance of my travels, so nobody could be taken by surprise. And I was pulled. I didn't actually get on the airplane. I was in that final threshold moment, when you travel internationally, and right before you go in the airplane, there's that stewardess that says, your passport, please. And you show them, and they just confirm that you have the visa. And they look at your ticket and they say, please go in. And I took that step thinking I'm in, and three uniformed Customs and Border Protection guys came up and said, William Ritter? Yes, follow us, please. Well, you have to obey the orders. I'm not here to get in a fight with law enforcement. Can we see your passport? You are obligated to surrender your passport. I did. They looked at it. Is this the only document you have to travel? Yeah, it's my U.S. passport. Fifth Amendment sort of gives me a right to travel. Well, we are informing you your passport has been, we are seizing your passport on the orders of the Department of State. And I said, do you have those orders? And they said, no. I said, well, who issued that order? Don't know. I said, well, can we find someone who does it? No, nobody knows anything. We're just told to seize it. Well, who told you to seize it? We don't know. I mean, it's that game. So at that point in time, what do? Do I fight them to get my passport back and then run on the airplane? It doesn't work that way. They were obeying orders. I have no personal animosity against these three gentlemen. In fact, one of them was a former Marine. We struck up a conversation about the Marine Corps. We shook hands, thanked each other for our respective service, that kind of thing. But, I wasn't traveling. They got my planes off the airplane, my bags off the airplane, and they escorted me out. And I said, well, what's the next step? And they said, call the State Department. Well, my next step was to go home, and then I called their boss, who said the same thing, call the State Department. We don't know. He couldn't even tell me if they still had my passport. He pretended he didn't know anything. I don't know anything about this. I said, three of you guys took my passport. They wouldn't give me a receipt. I don't know anything about this. You got to call the State Department. I called the State Department, got bounced around, and finally told I have to write a letter. To this day, I still don't know why they took my passport. They're not saying. It is what it is. It's a darn shame, because the trip I was going on was a very important trip, not just for the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, which would have been fascinating to attend. I was scheduled to appear on 2 panels, and there was a whole bunch of media interest, so I would have been able to have an even greater impact. But that was then going to lead to a 40-day trip in Russia, where I was going to travel from Vladivostok in the Pacific to Kaliningrad in the Baltic and everything in between, as part of my ongoing Waging Peace project, which is to travel Russia, meet Russians, see Russia, gather this information, bring it back to America, and help inoculate's a bad word. We can't use that. Help provide an antidote to the poison of Russophobia. And I wasn't able to do that. And, personally, I had a team. Normally I travel by myself. This time I put together a team that was going to come with me. This ain't cheap. We had raised a lot of money. And we had spent a lot of money, and we're never going to get that money back. And for anybody who's done projects like this, that's a heartbreaking reality that all that time and effort, the time is one thing, the effort's another thing, but money, it's not easy to come by, and it's not easy to recover. So the State Department timed their action deliberately. It was designed to prevent me from going to Russia. They won't tell me they won't admit that, they won't say it, but the timing is clear. This was done in a way that I could not recover from this, that I could not maybe pull back some obligations, maybe not commit some obligations. It was done for the maximum damage to the project. The bad news is they have temporarily succeeded. The good news is ain't quit in my name. And I'm going to keep going, and we're going to make this happen. We're going to make this work, and we're going to continue to press forward. I will get a U.S. passport. That's 100% guarantee. They can't stop me. And when I get that passport, I will resume traveling in full compliance with all the laws of America. I have violated no laws. Scott, how can you say that? Well, gosh, I think if they took my passport and I had violated laws, I'd have been arrested at the time too. Sort of the big hint. So plus I know I'm just not breaking the law. I'm very assiduous in complying with everything. I don't break sanctions. I don't violate sanctions. Scott, you went to Crimea, then you went to the Donbass, and you met with the Chechens. I'm a journalist. Let me introduce you to the First Amendment. Stick it in your ear. If you don't like what I'm saying, so sad, too bad. Can't stop me. That's the beauty of being an American. I get to say what I want. Free speech and a free press. And the government can't stop you. They did. There's a Supreme Court case, the U.S. versus, and I forget the gentleman's name, very brave man, 1950s. They seized his passport because he was traveling to the Soviet Union. And I think he spent 9 years fighting that, and he finally got the Supreme Court to rule in his favor. They had to return the passport. The U.S. government can't stop you from traveling just because they disagree with what you're saying. Can't.
Right. It seems un-American.
It is un-American. It's against the Constitution. The Fifth Amendment of the Constitution guarantees an American's right to travel unimpeded by the government, as long as there's not legal reasons for them to do that. The other thing is the Fourth Amendment. You can't take things, even though the passport is U.S. government property, you can't just come in and seize it without due process. And they provided no justification, no authority. They simply, 3 armed police officers stole my passport. That's illegal search and seizure. They have provided no authority, no justification. That's a Fourth Amendment violation. And then again, the way this was timed was designed to disrupt my freedom of speech and freedom of association. That's a First Amendment. What happened in the JFK airport was a frontal assault on the Constitution of the United States of America by the U.S. government against an American citizen. And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't agree with what I'm doing. That's your right. But if you don't understand that there before the grace of God go you, that if you sit back and allow the U.S. government to do this to me, they will do it to you eventually. They will do it to us all. This kind of assault on constitutional rights, the Constitution protects us all equally under the law. You can't have a Constitution that works for some people but not for others, because once you allow the government to breach the Constitution without consequence, they will now breach it against everybody. That's the reality of it. So this is actually a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal for me because, like I said, it disrupted what I thought was an important program. It cost us tens of thousands of dollars that we're not going to get back. But it's a bigger deal because this is the government doing to me what they believe they can do to you. The government doesn't care about the Constitution. It doesn't exist in the minds of the government. And if you live in a place where it's we the people of the United States in order to form a more perfect union, the preamble to the Constitution, we the people. If what you're saying is we the people don't matter anymore, it's no longer, as Abraham Lincoln said, government of the people, by the people, for the people. It's just government to do whatever the hell the government wants to do, and the people don't matter.
Scott, did they have a warrant?
Nope.
But how can they take your belongings without a warrant?
They have guns, and they have. I may be a former Marine, but Mama didn't raise no fool. And I got 3 guys in body armor, each one of them packing heat. And what am I supposed to do? Show my pathetic Aikido move? And grab a gun, and then maybe it's one of those guns that only reacts to his biometrics. And now I'm sitting there holding the gun, and they kill me. Now I held a gun, I pulled it on a federal officer, I'm going to jail for life. It ain't worth it. They come, they want the passport. It's the same thing. I was robbed in Istanbul once. I was there on, I was traveling back from Iran, and I had a long layover. So I said, I'm just going to go see Istanbul. I love Turkish history. So I was walking the wall, and I get to the Suleiman statue there, and this car comes screaming up. These 2 guys come out, and they flash a badge, say they're cops. But I'm looking at the badge going, that ain't no cop badge. But they're pulling guns on me, and they accuse me of being a drug dealer. Give us the drugs. I said, I don't have drugs. We're going to inspect your backpack. Well, you got guns. Inspect my backpack. Where's your passport? Where's your wallet? And it suddenly dawned on me, these ain't cops. I'm being robbed. And so I'm sitting there going, all right, 20 years ago, I went to a course where I would learn how to disarm people pointing guns at me. And I remember I would do this, then I'd own the gun, then I could pop this guy twice, pop this guy twice. And it's all going through my head. And I went, maybe I can, maybe I don't. Maybe I fumble this one. This guy shoots me. Now I'm dead. Or maybe I do this, kill both of them. But now I'm in Turkey holding a gun, shooting 2 guys who had identified themselves as police officers. And if I'm wrong, I just killed 2 cops. And if I'm right, I just killed 2 Turks in Turkey. I saw Midnight Express. I don't want to go to Turkish jail. So I let him rob me. And that's just the way it was. And guess what? I'm here today. They took $500. I'm alive. Those cops took my passport. I think they did it in violation of law. What am I supposed to do about it? I'm not going to fight them. So they did it. They didn't have a warrant. It's a warrantless search, violation of the 4th Amendment. Now, some people, I have my good friend, Judge Andrew Napolitano, has said, take him to court. And he's 100% right, but 100% wrong. And I'll tell you why. The judiciary of America is fundamentally broken. I have taken people to court before with constitutionally sound cases. It drags out forever. Now, if I'm a corporation and I have money, or if a lawyer who's working pro bono and I don't have to worry about money, time isn't my enemy. But if I'm Scott Ritter, who has to pay for all this, time is my enemy. Every second that goes by, I'm paying money I don't have. And this fact that I have to go to court bankrupts me. And it not just bankrupts me fiscally, it ties my hand operationally. I am now tied to a system that not only do I not control the system, it's a system that's never going to let me win no matter what. They're going to drag it out, and I'm going to get involved. And even if I win the initial thing, the appellate process will go on and on and on. It will take 9 years. I don't have 9 years. I'm going to get my passport back before the summer's out. That I can guarantee. Does it bother me that the government did this and I'm not going to hold them accountable through a court of law? It bothers me tremendously. But having done this before, I'm focused on getting back on track, doing that which I do best, which is travel, collect information, feed it back through various means, written, spoken, otherwise. But I wish the courts were a place where an American citizen could fall back on for defense against the abuses of government. But unless you're backed by money and power centers, you virtually have no chance in the court of law.
Yeah. Plus you'll get tied up in legal fees. And at the end, you're probably like, wasn't worth it. Right.
Well, especially when I just shelled out $50,000 on a trip that didn't happen. So, it's like, and I've never had $50,000 in my life and it's gone. Oh, well, it is life. It is what it is.
And Scott, you were supposed to speak with, I think, Fiorella and Tara Reid at that event that you were going to attend in Russia.
Well, we were on the same panel together. I think Fiorella was on one panel and Tara was on the other. I did actually get to participate in the Tara Reid panel. I did it remotely. You know, I'm glad I did it, but I have to tell you, to appear live in Russia at the time of I had to be up at 3 a.m, on air at 3:30 in the morning. And I don't know about you, Sabrina, but I'm of the age where 3:30 in the morning ain't when I'm supposed to be out doing anything. Oh, boy's supposed to be in bed asleep. And so it was physically difficult because you have to adjust your calendar leading up to it. You have to get, sleep beforehand, rest. And then when it's done, you have to, make up for it. So it basically ruined about 3 days, but it was worth every second because it was important to appear on that panel because that's the panel the U.S. government didn't want me to appear on.
This is true. Well, a lot has happened since then, and I'm pretty sure you saw this. So the first thing I wanted to ask you about is this announcement here. Russia's Putin and North Korea's Kim sign a mutual defense pact. And there's a video here from Vladimir Putin. I apologize to the audience. It is in Russian, so you'll have to read the captions here. It's about 30 seconds. Everyone, check this out.
Обращаю внимание на заявление Соединенных Штатов, других натовских стран о поставках высокоточных систем вооружения большого радиуса действия, самолетов F-16 и другого высокотехнологичного вооружения, техники для нанесения ударов по российской территории. В этой связи Российская Федерация не исключает для себя развитие военно-технического сотрудничества с Корейской Народно-Демократической Республикой в соответствии с подписанным сегодня документом.
So Russia, apparently, this is a statement from Putin that they are open to working with North Korea militarily. How do you feel about this, Scott? I think a lot of people are freaked out when they saw this statement from Vladimir Putin because they said, uh-oh, now Russia is, trying to collaborate with North Korea.
No, they're not trying to collaborate with North Korea. They are collaborating with North Korea. Russia will first of all, Russia's already in a military technical cooperation with North Korea. They already are purchasing weapons from North Korea, and they are working with North Korea in terms of transfer of certain technologies. But what Putin is talking about is giving North Korea intercontinental ballistic missile capability with warheads that cannot be shot down, so that if the United States were to engage in a conflict with North Korea, it is a 100% certainty that North Korean nuclear-tipped ICBMs will hit American cities and destroy them. 100% certainty. That's what Russia's saying, that there is no more free ride for America. America doesn't get to go around and threaten people. When the day is done, North Korea will have an SS-27 type missile. That's a road mobile intercontinental ballistic missile capable of holding multiple warheads. And these warheads will include the equivalent of the avant-garde hypersonic maneuvering warhead, which cannot be shot down by the United States. That's just the reality. And so Putin has warned America, you give weapons to people to attack Russia, we give weapons to those people to attack you. It's asymmetric in nature. That's where we're at. Now, people can condemn Vladimir Putin for all that. Well, it's cause and effect relationship, people. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And it's actually the most stabilizing thing that he could do, because now it takes, frankly speaking, war off the table. The United States has been working aggressively the last 2 years to get Japan and South Korea together in this new trilateral alliance designed to defeat North Korea. North Korea cannot be defeated now. It's now in a strategic relationship with Russia that extends to military technical means. Russia will not only empower North Korea to defend itself with adequate weapons, but Russia is there to work with North Korea as a partner, strategic partner, if North Korea is attacked by another. You can't attack North Korea in isolation anymore. Anybody who wants to go to war with North Korea now has to factor in going to war with Russia.
Wow. Oh my God. Can you believe how this has escalated since this war started with Russia and Ukraine? Can you believe like how much this has escalated in like the past 2 years? This is crazy. Like, and could you explain to everyone, Scott, like why can't those particular missiles be shot down?
Well, before I do that, can it just allow me to pick up on how crazy this is? All right. I just want to remind people that in 2019, Donald Trump was meeting with Kim Jong-un to denuclearize North Korea, to get rid of these weapons. In exchange, we would lift sanctions against North Korea, and we would bring North Korea into the modern fold with certain security guarantees, a peace treaty. And Democrats and Republicans alike opposed this. Donald Trump, whom I am no fan of, Donald Trump had America on the cusp of being able to have that Pyongyang moment, but instead of Putin to be an American president, and instead of promoting the delivery of nuclear weapons capable technology, speaking about the elimination of it. We were that close. Mike Pompeo and John Bolton sabotaged this from within. Congress sabotaged it from without. But Donald Trump had us on the cusp of eliminating this threat. All we had to do is want peace. All we had to do is say, we want peace. But America is incapable of saying, we want peace. We only choose war. And now today, we have a situation where North Korea has nuclear weapons. They have long-range ballistic missiles, and they're about to get technology that makes it guaranteed that if America goes to war against North Korea, America will pay the heaviest possible price. Right now, we don't know what would happen. North Korea has a missile that in theory can make it to the United States. In theory. The problem is when it fired, we have built interceptor missiles that we have in Alaska and elsewhere that in theory could shoot it down. So from a war planning standpoint, in the mindset of the American military is even if they launch, we'll shoot it down. And the other thing is the scientists are saying they haven't perfected the reentry technology. So that warhead's going to come in with a nuclear weapon on it, and it's too hot. It's going to malfunction. It's not going to do what it's supposed to do. So even if we don't shoot it down, the likelihood is it's not going to function properly. And so the best they're going to get is a fizzle. It'll come and go fizzle, and it'll contaminate some areas on the ground, but it ain't going to blow up a city. We don't need to worry about it. That's the theory right now, that we don't have to worry about that. What Russia's about to give them is a missile that is not going to be your standard ballistic missile trajectory. It's going to take off very fast, and then it's going to turn and fly and maneuver. And then when it gets to the point of release, it's not going to fly a normal ballistic trajectory. When it gets to the point of release, it's going to release 1, 2, or 3 warheads, which are now going to accelerate on their own, maneuver in. They can't be intercepted, and they're going to hit with extreme precision whatever they're aiming at with a nuclear warhead sized sufficiently to destroy the target intended, whether it's a city, whether it's a bunker, whether it's something else. That's the threat we're going to be facing. And I just want to remind people that literally 5 years ago, we could have eliminated it all. Could you imagine today if somebody went to President Biden and said, hey, if you just sat down with Kim Jong-un, we could get rid of his nuclear weapons program. All you have to do is lift sanctions. Now, there were people out there, we can't lift sanctions. Sanctions is strangling North Korea, and that's what we need to do. You can't sanction North Korea today because Russia just opened up the damn border. Russia now is doing business with North Korea. There are no more sanctions against North Korea. Yeah, the West isn't doing business, but Russia is. Sanction Russia. We already have. There ain't nothing left to sanction. Russia's just going to do what it does with a vibrant tech economy that's functioning and is about to plug into an even more vibrant, globalized BRICS economy. North Korea is not a member of BRICS. They don't need to be. Russia is a leading member of BRICS. North Korea is going to benefit directly and indirectly from this relationship. It's game, set, match. North Korea has won everything. Everything. We can't touch them militarily. We can't strangle them economically. And we've just ensured that North Korea doesn't care about anything we think about. The only country in the world that counts to North Korea right now is Russia. And they have great relations with Russia. They don't need anybody else. They would like to have good relations with China. But I just also want to point this out. You know, all those people say, Putin's a vassal of Xi Jinping. He couldn't have done this unless he got permission from Xi Jinping. Putin doesn't need permission from anybody. And he will never ask permission from anybody. He may have briefed Xi Jinping on the objectives, not to take the Chinese by surprise, but what Putin is doing with North Korea is actually a direction that China doesn't necessarily want to go. China was working with the West to control North Korea's nuclear ambition because a nuclear war in North Korea will bleed over to China, and China doesn't want that. So China was looking for other ways. But China will now have no choice but to jump on the North Korea is A-OK bandwagon. Again, the stupidity of American policymakers is manifest today when we just simply point out that 5 years ago, we could have gotten rid of North Korea's nuclear weapons if we were just rational. Today, we have a nuclear-armed North Korea that we can't touch economically or militarily or geopolitically. We can't isolate them because we've already isolated ourselves from their lifeline, Russia. Russia doesn't care what we think about anymore. They simply don't care. What are we going to do? Sanction Russia more? We can't. So this North Korea thing is huge. It's huge. It's bigger than anybody can possibly understand.
How do you think the U.S. government is going to respond to that? Well, two questions in one. How do you think the U.S. government is going to respond to this collaboration with Russia and North Korea? And also, I'm not sure if you heard about this, but the House just passed legislation, bipartisan legislation, to automatically implement 18 to 26-year-olds in the draft automatically instead of them signing up for it. And I told people I think that's because they want them to fight their wars because military recruitment has decreased. So two questions in one there. How do you think the U.S. government will respond? And what do you think about them trying to push the draft back into action?
Well, the question is, what can they do? I mean, we've seen them. We condemn the North Koreans for doing this. The North Koreans will pay a heavy. What are you going to do? Sanction them? I mean, well, the problem is it's like the boy who cries wolf, you know. But we're going to sanction you. We're going to sanction you. We are sanctioning. We're sanctioning you. We're sanctioning you. Sanctioning you. Sanctioning you. And they keep doing it. And then you say, if you don't stop doing it, we're going to sanction you. Please sanction. We don't care. The other thing is the U.S. has made itself irrelevant. There was a time 5 years ago when North Korea wanted to talk to America. North Korea doesn't care about America. There's literally nothing America could put on the table today that would make North Korea say, oh, wait a minute, let's consider that. North Korea tried. Even after Biden came in, North Korea kept saying, we want to continue the talks that began with Trump. And Biden wouldn't do it because we believe we could threaten North Korea, sanction North Korea, weaken North Korea. There's a photograph that people oftentimes use. If you go on the internet, Google North Korea nighttime lights. It shows the Korean Peninsula, and in the south, it's all lit up because there's electricity everywhere. In the north, it's sort of dark. Pyongyang has a couple lights, but it's dark. And everybody points to that photograph and says, see, North Korea is a third world country, backward nation. Look at that photograph in 3 years. North Korea is going to be lit up. It's over. We lost. We can't. There's nothing we can do. And here's the bad part for America. The Japanese and South Koreans now know that there's nothing we can do. And so this trilateral alliance that we've been pushing and imposing on them, I think you're going to start to see the South Koreans saying, no, we need peace with the North. We don't need it. And Japan's going to say, we can't live in this neighborhood where Russia and North Korea now, and if China comes on board, we're odd man out in America. We don't have confidence in you, in your leadership, or anything. Your policies have sucked. And I think that what Putin has done is created the seeds of America's destruction in the region as the world moves away from us and towards this multilateral entity called BRICS. I predict that within 5 years, both Japan and South Korea will be applying to join BRICS. That's my prediction. And when that happens, it's the end of America and our hegemony. But at least in the Pacific. About the draft. I mean, maybe I'll answer your question with a quick counter question. What do you think would happen if to these 18 to 26-year-olds? Because here's my opinion. I mean, I don't mean to insult anybody, but I'm going to. We don't have patriotic American kids anymore. We have kids that are very self-centered, kids that are very about comfort, creature comfort. We don't have kids that sign up to sacrifice for their country. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. That was the statement that motivated my generation. And I grew up saying, I must serve my country.
We want the country to serve us now.
That's right. It's a one-way sign that says, me, which isn't bad. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'd love to live in a country that you didn't have to worry about going to war in defense of. And if you did have to go to war, it would be because somebody actually threatened you and you needed to defend yourself. But to fight in these forever wars that America's involved in, when we are definitely the bad guys, we're not the good guys at any of the fights we're involved in, to motivate this generation to do it involuntarily, I don't think it can be done. I don't think you can institute a draft and have it function. I just don't see it happening. I see the streets full of angry young people who are saying, hell no, we won't go. And then what does America do? Go police state on them, martial law, forceful conscription. We become an extension of Ukraine. We bonk people on the head, throw them in vans, take them in, give them 2 weeks training, put a uniform on them, send them to the front lines. That'll lead to a civil war. I often tell people, to answer this question, you need to go back and take a look at what happened during the Vietnam War, which prompted us to move away from a draft military, conscription military, to an all-volunteer force, because the drafting Americans to fight an unpopular war turned out to be the sowing the seeds of the destruction of America. We would have fallen apart as a society. So we transitioned, and there's a general, Creighton Abrams, I think his name was, who oversaw the transition to a volunteer force. And how hard that was. I enlisted in the United States Army in 1979. At the, still at the end of the Vietnam War era. The Vietnam War didn't stop. We didn't stop having American troops dying until 1975. The last vestige of the Vietnam War was fought actually on a tiny island called Koh Tang Island off the coast of Cambodia, where the USS Mayaguez was seized by Khmer Rouge, and we sent Marines in to rescue them, and lost a lot of Marines. 1975. I enlisted in 1979. We still had people that were part of what they called McNamara's 100,000 because the draft was so unpopular. We lowered the intellectual standards to get into the military, and we were letting in people who weren't intellectually capable of serving in the military join the military. They were still in the Army. Racism, the racism that existed in the 60s and 70s was manifest. When I went to basic training, I was some dumb, stupid kid that came off of a U.S. Air Force base in Germany where, the military had, I played football on a team where my running back was a black man, but I didn't view him as a black man. I just viewed him as my teammate. I said, "You're my teammate. You're not black. I'm not white. We're teammates." And we acted like teammates. And I got to the Army training camp, and there were black tables, white tables, Puerto Rican tables. And don't sit at the black table. You won't live. Don't go to the Puerto Rican table. You won't live. You got to sit with the white table. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? This isn't America. Well, actually it was. I lived in a little fantasy world, and the real America was this horribly racist, divided society. And then the other problem that happened is they were all smoking dope in basic training. I'm like, how the hell? I didn't even know what dope was. And they're like sitting there going, "Want some?" "No, I don't smoke." "Oh, you want this?" "I don't want this. Really, I don't." It was fundamentally broken, but that was part of the transition. It took us until about the mid 1980s to purge our military of this taint of the draft system to get an all volunteer system, which was largely comprised of motivated people who wanted to be all they could be, people who knew they were never promised a rose garden. I'm giving you two recruiting themes from the time. I joined a Marine Corps that said if everybody could be a Marine, there wouldn't be Marines. It wasn't about yellow cards, timeout, make it easy. It was, if you want to be a Marine, we're going to kick the hell out of you. We're going to blow your brains out. We're going to beat you up. You think you got what it takes? Yeah, I got what it takes. Well, come on. And it became this challenge. You're going to break me. You ain't breaking me. I'm a Marine. Oh! And then I'm surrounded by guys who think the same way. That's what made us dangerous, is that we were motivated to do this. We volunteered to do this. That system doesn't exist today. It can't. In Marine training, they're not allowed to do the shark attack anymore. Shark attack, everybody who's been in the Marines know the yellow footsteps. You get off the bus, and then the DIs come in, and they come at you. Ah! The idea is to break you down, to turn you into jelly, and then build you back up into a Marine. Not allowed to do that today. Now they're allowed to pull out a yellow card. Timeout. Timeout. There ain't no timeout in war. But there is a timeout in basic training, and safe zones. Now DIs have to sit down and talk with them and communicate with them and bond with them, and this. And so we're creating, even in the military we have, this military is incapable of waging the kind of war that's necessary, but it's still an all-volunteer force. Try now recruiting people that don't want to be there. Not just that. One of the reasons why we can't recruit people, and again, they're fat. I don't mean to pick on American society today.
You said they're fat.
They're fat. They're out of shape. They're obese. They don't exercise. They don't have the stamina. They don't have what it takes to do it. So we have to dumb down the entire system to let even these people that are joined today. The people that joined today, 80% of them could not have joined in the 1980s. They would have been disqualified physically. If they joined, they would have said, "You're fat. Leave." We had a fat platoon in the Marine Corps. The shark attack. The guy knows what I'm talking about. But we had a fat platoon. If you went in and you were, marginal on weight, when I say fat, you're not really that fat. Today, they'd be called fit. What we called fat back then would be called fit today. But the fat boys were put in a motivation platoon, and they motivated them by trying to kill them. And if you had what it took, you drop the weight, and you'd accomplish the physical tasks, and they'd bring you back, and you could finish the training cycle. If you didn't, you were cycled out, sent home. Today, they had to change. They have to change all of the training because we have fat kids that come in, and they can't do it. They can't do it. They can't do it. We're a fluffy nation. It's more than fluffy, man. Fluffy is we're jelly bean. We're marshmallow people. And so now you want to draft marshmallows into a system that is supposed to turn them into hardened steel and involuntarily. Everybody today wants this. They want to be on their phone. They want to be tech. What job do people want? Nobody says, I want the job that requires me to get up at 5:30 in the morning, go out and sweat my butt off, doing hard labor. That's what we have Mexicans for. Sorry, didn't mean to go there, but that's what the Mexicans are for. Bring them over illegally, make them do that stuff. We don't talk about it. Go to the hotel. Don't pretend you don't see who's making your bed in the morning. The little brown ladies who speak a foreign language, don't pretend they exist because you don't want to ask the question, how much money do you make? Do you pay taxes? Are you here legally? Are you being abused by your employers? Do you have the rights and privileges of Americans? We don't want to ask that question. The people that do the hard work of America today mostly are non-Americans. And again, we got the old school guys, the steel workers, the iron workers. We got some workers out there that do stuff, but they're getting old. Where are the kids that want to come up and do that? How many kids want to graduate high school and go to welding school? You know who goes to welding school? A handful of well-meaning people, but people who can't get a job anywhere else. So they're compelled to do it. But ideally, you'd like to be sitting right where I'm at, behind a computer screen, getting soft. And type in, and not even typing, because that's work. That requires thinking. You don't type. You want to click, 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 click. Oh, a phone call. Hi, yes, I have a brilliant idea. Yes, I think if we moved the color magenta over slightly and made it a little pink, that we could do something. Oh, brilliant idea. Now pay me $20,000. Thank you very much. That's it. That's all Americans want to do today. They want to do service things. They want to, they're soft. Now we come back to the draft. War is a hard business. War is the hardest business in the world because not only do you have to harden your body to survive, because if you don't, understand, you die. That's one of the problems with a soft military is we're guaranteeing with a soft military, we can't kill the enemy as efficiently as one. I'm sorry, Sabrina. I mean, I don't mean to be blunt here, but that's what war is about. I hope people understand the military is not there to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. We're not there to be a reflection of American society. America may be about transgendered rights. The military cannot be about transgendered rights. Why, Scott? Because you're disruptive of the team concept where the team has to work together in unity to accomplish the most difficult mission in the world, which is to close with and destroy the enemy through firepower maneuver. And if we screw up any aspect of this mission, we die. I don't want to die. I don't want you to die. And when you soften my brain by bringing in social issues that are so complex that even society can't handle it, admit that. We have to admit that. I'm not saying right or wrong on transgenderism. What I'm saying is, even as a society and civilian society, with all the things, we can't handle it. We can't have a debate about it. And now you're going to put it in a military environment? All you're doing is disrupting discipline, unity, focus. The same thing with gay rights. I don't care what your sexuality is. I really don't. Fact is, I'll defend your right to be whatever the hell you want to be, anytime you want to be it. All power to you. But in the military, you can't have sexual tension. You can't. because you're thinking about something other than killing the bad guy. The military is this singular entity coming together to kill. And the second you soften it by saying, no, we're going to be like society, you lose the ability to kill the enemy, and you make yourself more susceptible to being killed by the enemy. And this is just the reality of it. And maybe that's the price we have to pay as a democracy to exist as a democracy. Maybe we have to accept a military that isn't as efficient as it needs to be, both in terms of killing and surviving. That's a decision society gets to make. But there are ultimately compromises that have to be made within the military to function as a military. Even in our suppressed capability fashion today, we still have to do certain things. You still have to get up in the morning, maybe not run as far as you used to. Maybe you don't run in boots anymore. Oh, God, imagine that. We're only going to run in tennis shoes. Why? Because we go to war in boots. Wait a minute. If we go to war in boots, why do we run in tennis shoes? Well, we don't want to give you shin splints. But if we run in boots in war, do we get shin splints? Yeah, but that's war. This is peacetime. That's the whole thing. You can't draft. This is a long way of saying this draft will never work. One, even if it did work, we'd lose because we're drafting softies into a hard business. And two, as much as I make fun of today's youth and their softness, they have made a decision that they aren't the tools of the establishment. And even if they were hard, they'd say, we're not going to do this. We're not going to fight your war. Could you imagine trying to draft people? Let's say Hezbollah goes to war against Israel today and Israel's getting beat. America says, we got to go in, but we can't go in with troops because we don't have enough troops. We need to draft. All those kids that are in the camps right now, camping out or in colleges and opposing this, you think there's something you go, oh, well, screw it. They drafted me. I'm going. We're going to kill Hamas. We're going to go kill Hezbollah. We're going to fight on behalf of Israel. It's okay because I've been drafted. No, the demonstrations they've done against Israeli genocide will become a demonstration against them being drafted to facilitate. How many kids want to be drafted to go die in Ukraine?
Right.
No one. So it's not going to work. It's a stupid law passed by a stupid Congress, which is so disconnected from the reality of America. It's unbelievable. You can't fix a broken military by making it more broke. This is like taking an engine. I got an engine and, I'm not an auto mechanic. I'm just making stuff up right now. Got an engine that sounds bad. How am I going to fix it? Pour sand in the engine. That ain't going to work. You're going to break the engine. The draft is pouring sand into the military engine. It just isn't going to work.
This is not to mention, too, after the Vietnam War, remember how those soldiers were treated when they came back to the United States, right? Like They were called baby killers and some other things. Some of those soldiers ended up, they struggled to find work because they were a part of the Vietnam War. I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but some of the soldiers that came back from the Vietnam War, they struggled to find jobs because they were seen as, the baby killers. So what happened? Some of those soldiers turned to drug. Watch Rambo. That's what Rambo is about for people who are not aware. Sylvester Stallone's character Rambo, that's what that is about. He is a soldier that returns to the U.S. after being, in the war in Vietnam, and he reacts the way that he does because of the treatment and some of the psychological warfare that he had to deal with as well. So his anger that you see in the character Rambo, that is due to the way that he was treated when he came back to the U.S. and some of the things that he saw when he was in the war in Vietnam.
Yep. I mean, Bruce Springsteen, I don't know what you think about Bruce Springsteen. I love him as a musician. Some people do, but don't like his politics. I'm leaving the politics out. But he wrote a song called Brothers Under the Bridge. And it describes this situation about a Vietnam War veteran returning, trying to assimilate back into life. And he talks about how he was there with his wife. And they were at a parade, and 1 minute you're right there, and then he had to leave. He couldn't handle it, and he ends up living under a bridge with the other Vietnam veterans, segregated from society because that was the only thing that made sense to him. And that's a reality. America, the Vietnam War generation is aging out. They're getting old, but there was a secret in America that nobody wanted to talk about, which was the brothers under the bridge, the brothers in the woods, the brothers in the alleys, the tens of thousands of Vietnam War veterans who were unable to assimilate back into society, and how they lived in these clusters of people that couldn't go back. They had families, they had wives, they had children, but they couldn't go back to them because they were fundamentally broken by the war. They exist today too, by the way, Sabrina. What we did in the 20 years that we fought in Afghanistan and Iraq has destroyed several generations of American youth. Yes, the death count wasn't as high as Vietnam. Yes, the death count wasn't as high as World War II or Korea. We broke so many Americans in Afghanistan, in Iraq. These are kids, and a lot of the injuries that happen over there. You have the explosive, the IEDs, improvised explosive bombs that blow up and flip over the Humvee, and you live. I'm alive, but your spine's a little hurt. You got a little hurt there, and I got a headache. I got this concussion, but they put you back, and it happened again, and it hurt. And now you're getting ready to come out. You're like, Doc, my head hurts, man. My head hurts. Here's some aspirin. But I got this here. I'm going to write you this prescription, oxycodone. I'm going to give you some oxy. And wow, Doc, the pain went away. Thank you, Doc. And we're going to give you this other drug that's going to help with your brain a little bit. Oh, I'm sort of psychedelic right now. I'm feeling good and no pain. Thank you, Doc. And I'm going back to America now. And I'm confused, though, because I've spent so much time over there where it's not here. And I was with a team, and nobody wants to be my teammate anymore because they view me as something bad. Oh, my back hurts. Doc, I need more medicine. No, you don't get medicine anymore. Doc, my back hurts. No, guy on the street. You need some oxy? Yeah, it's going to cost you. Can't afford oxy anymore. Other guy, heroin's the same thing, baby. Heroin's the same. Oh, really? Heroin. Now you got a guy who's a heroin addict who was a good guy or gal. This happens to women too. They were good. Whether you agree with it or not, they at one point in time said, I'm going to raise my hand and take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution and to serve my country. They may have believed in the cause when they went over there. They may have become, but at one point in time, these were people who were willing to sacrifice everything in support of something. And now society has rejected them because of their service. The service, and imagine what that does to you psychologically. The same thing happened to the Vietnam War veterans. They went over there thinking they were doing one thing, found out it was another, came back, and society rejected and condemned them for this thing. The same thing today. How many yellow stickers do you see on the back of cars, Sabrina? Support our troops. Support our troops. How many people in those? But they used to be prevalent. They used to be out there all the time. Everybody had them. But I always would say, really, did you go to the VA? Were you there holding the hands of the kid that he's 24-year-old now, paralyzed, and he poops into a colostomy bag? Do you hold his hand while it gets changed, while the nurse bathes him down? His family's rejected him. He was a guy who proposed to a beautiful young girl before he went to war. And she took the ring, and maybe he came home on leave and got her pregnant. She has the baby, but now he came home and he's ugly and he's disfigured and he's this thing, and she couldn't live. She went off and left him. And now his family's because it's too inconvenient. It's Memorial Day, damn it. I'm supposed to be drinking a beer, going to a parade. I'm not going to the VA hospital to smell your stinking colostomy bag. You become inconvenient to me. And so they forget about them, and they're abandoned by society. There are so many American today, veterans who serve their country, who have been abandoned by society. They are broken people. War breaks people. War breaks people. All these people saying, well, I believe in the draft. The hell you do. Why do you want to break American kids? Why do you want to break them? Because that's all that's happening. People come to me and say, Scott, should I join the military? Should my kid? I'm saying, I can't make that decision for you. But war will break you. If you go to war, you will be fundamentally broken. I'm broken. I'm broken. I'm not as broken as others, thank God. But I'm forever changed by the experience. And there's some people that, who can handle the change. I think I've coped fairly well. There's other people who can't handle the change. I am blessed by friends and family who put up with my nonsense. And so, it leads to healing. But there's other people who don't. They get rejected because they manifest differently. And to be frank, most people, they don't understand what's happening to you. And it's hard for somebody who's been through it to talk to somebody who hasn't been through it. I mean, the dumbest conversation in the world at a bar. Kill anybody? Ask the question again. We'll get an answer like you. The stupidity of America about war, about warriors, about what happened is manifest. We live in a world where we allow combat to be defined by computer games. I don't know how many people play Call of Duty or Medal of Honor who've Fortnite. It's all. Look, I became addicted to Fortnite. I'm just being honest. I played it, and my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "This is fun. Holy shit, I get to run around and kill things." And oh God, look, oh God, oh, it's addictive. Until I realized that I just spent my whole day living out my worst nightmare, and I was not productive, and I didn't accomplish anything except make myself sink further and further and further into that cave that you don't want to sink into. So I don't play Fortnite anymore. I don't condemn people who do play it, but I'm just saying that life ain't that. You don't get to dance after you kill somebody, and you don't get to reset and all that stuff. You're dead, or you're wounded, or you're fundamentally broken. We have to stop worshiping war, and we have to stop worshiping wars, and we have to stop thinking that violence is the answer, and we have to start appreciating the costs. I think if we spent more time caring for the broken Americans from our past wars, we would be less inclined to allow future wars to occur.
I agree. And I come from a military family as well. So I'm very much familiar how the VA, I feel, has abandoned a lot of those soldiers. And I don't know if all of you watching have ever been to the VA, but all you got to do is just walk in there once and you can see it's a mess. It's a madhouse. It's a lot of paperwork, a lot of red tape.
You can smell it as soon as you come in there. Mm-hmm. It's a different smell.
It's very different. One thing I will say, there was an article recently that said a lot of younger kids are choosing to forego college and go into the trade. So this is changing. They're choosing to go into more blue collar fields, which I think is great. We do need more of that. We need construction.
College have something to do with that.
Yeah, it's one of those things too, that when you get a house, you may not realize it, but when you get a house, then you're like, oh shoot, we got a plumbing issue. Who do I call? What do I do? You need plumbers. You need electricians. Lived in apartments for years. So
you sound like my wife, because she's like, "What do you do?" Hey, I'm a former Marine. Yeah, but what does that mean? Honey, I serve my country. Yeah, but the plumbing's broken. Can you fix the plumbing? Of course not. I can negotiate with a plumber, but I can't. And she makes fun of me because she's like, "You're useless. You're literally the most useless man in the world, because when things break around the house, you don't know how to fix it because you don't have a trade." And for a while, I was sort of insulted by that because I'm a history major. History major. How much plumbing can I fix with a history degree? None. But she's right. The more because I'm a homeowner, and we bought a house now. The house is now approaching, it's a 45 years old house. Things are breaking. And I'm realizing that A, I don't know how to fix it. And B, I have to hire somebody to fix it. And C, that costs me a lot of money. And D, maybe if I had taken the time to learn how to do this stuff, I could fix it myself. So I think it's great that people are getting a trade out there, especially today. A college degree isn't what it used to be. They've made it mandatory to get these jobs out there. But if you have to go in debt $160,000 to get a college degree, and then come out in a job that's paying you, I don't know, let's say you make $80,000 a year, but you got to pay taxes, and you got to pay rent, and then you got to pay back the college thing, and you can't save any money because life's expensive. It's getting more expensive. And that's a trap. It becomes this debt trap that defines your life. Or you can sit there and go, if I'm a plumber, A, it only costs me a little bit to become a plumber. B, everybody's paying me money to be a plumber. I got guaranteed income. I can buy my own house. I can buy my own car. I can have a savings account. I can go on vacations. Being a plumber is the greatest job in the world because you're self-sufficient, you're self-employed, and you're able to live. It's a hell of a lot better than being an accountant with a major accounting firm, because those kids that are accountants they're in a debt trap. Same thing with lawyers. I've talked to a lot of lawyers, and I'm like, law degree, and they're like, worst mistake I ever made. Worst mistake I ever made.
Hence why I did not go to law school, because I would have ended up in much, much more debt. It's not worth it.
No.
Not worth it. Oh, one more thing I have about Russia I want to ask you too, because you mentioned the sanctions. Did you hear about the story about the Moscow Stock Exchange? It was reported that they are not going to trade dollar and euros. What do you think that means for the economy just worldwide? And I feel like that's Russia sending a strong message to the United States.
Well, it is. I mean, Russia has bent over backwards to try and accommodate the United States and Europe. Russia kept saying, we don't want to unplug from you. It's not our goal. It's not our objective. You're the ones unplugging from us. It's the same thing with the sale of gas and oil. Russia's like, quit blaming us for you making the decision not to buy our oil and gas. We're not the ones that are causing you the harm. You're causing the harm. We can sell it to you right now. I think a lot of Americans don't realize the Nord Stream pipelines, there's actually 4 pipelines. There's Nord Stream 1, that was 2 pipelines. Nord Stream 2 was 2 pipelines. Not all the pipelines were blown up. Some of them still exist. And I think actually there's a Nord Stream 2 pipeline that's up and running and ready to ship gas anytime that all the Germans have to do is hit the on button. Go, okay, let's turn it on. Oh, look, gas is flowing and we suddenly have a functioning economy. But the Germans won't because America tells them not to. America says, don't buy that cheap Russian gas. Buy the expensive American gas. And, the Germans are all about, clean energy. We are about clean energy. Global warming is a big problem. This is my horrible German accent. And, and yet, so the Germans are like, we're not going to buy the cheap Russian gas that actually comes out of the ground relatively ecologically friendly. We're going to buy the expensive American gas that comes out of the ground through fracking. The most ecologically damaging process in the history of ecologically damaging process. The whole thing is contradictory. No, the Russians basically, we're stealing money from them. We stole, we've seized their assets, $300 billion. And then that, it's sitting in the bank. And if you have money sit in the bank long enough, you make money. And so Russia made about $50 billion in interest rates and stuff. So we stole that $50 billion. We said, that's not your money. You're not allowed to have money. And we're giving it to the Ukrainians. And so the Russians finally just said, we're done. It coincided with Saudi Arabia saying, well, we're done with the petrodollar too. We're not buying oil or not selling oil exclusively in dollars anymore. We're going to sell it for other currencies. And the thing is, everybody said, well, the market crashed. And I love the ignorance of people. The ruble crashed. And they're putting up a chart there. See, the ruble used to be 89 rubles to the dollar, and now it's 82 rubles to the dollar. I'm like, I'm a Marine. I'm not very good at math, but that means the ruble's getting stronger against the dollar. You take a dollar, you used to take a dollar and buy 89 rubles. And now you take a dollar and you can buy 82 rubles. The dollar's getting weaker, not stronger. And that's the direction we're heading right now. There's going to be a BRICS meeting in October where Russia's going to push de-dollarization. They're going to be pushing for institutions to replace the American-dominated SWIFT banking system to encourage global transactions in currencies other than the dollar. This is a big problem for the United States because it's going to lead to massive inflation, the devaluation of the dollar, less purchasing power. If you think it's tough to go shopping today, and I'm sure, Sabrina, you've seen the purchasing power of your dollar compared to, say, January when you went and filled up a shopping cart, and today when you fill up a shopping cart, it's a little bit different. I don't know about your paycheck. My paycheck stays the same, but the cost of food goes up, which means I have the ability to buy less. That's the reality of America's economic future. The best case. But no, this is a big deal for Russia to walk away from the dollar and the euro. It shows a strategic commitment that will become manifest in BRICS around the world. And when China starts dumping the dollar, it'll have a rolling effect and everybody will dump the dollar. And then we're a nation that has a lot of dollars that nobody wants. That's a problem.
Yeah. I don't even fill up the shopping cart anymore. When I go to the grocery store, I usually go like once a week, and I'll just get a couple of things. That is usually the same things, but I usually just get like a couple of things. But that's it. But I don't. The days where I used to go to the grocery store and fill up the shopping cart, I haven't done that in a long time. But yeah, I just go and get like little quick like items like once a week. But speaking of BRICS, JB has a good point here. What are the odds that DPRK joining BRICS in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, DPRK is a Democrat. I think it's DRPK, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. There he is. He got it right. Jay, you got it right. I got it wrong. North Korea. We'll just call it North Korea. Joining BRICS Plus, because BRICS was the original 5 members. It's now 10 members, and it's going to expand even further in the next 3 to 5 years. BRICS is a consensus-driven entity, and until North Korea aligns itself more efficiently with the global system, it's been isolated so long that it doesn't have systems ready to plug in. It's going to learn with Russia to rebuild these systems, these institutions, these mechanisms. And as soon as North Korea gets there, I think North Korea is going to be invited to join BRICS. But how long it will take North Korea to do that is I think the driving question. Could it be done in 3 to 5 years? I think the answer is yes. It could be done in 3 to 5 years. So if you're in Vegas, Jay, and you're asking me, you said, what are the odds? I would go ahead and say that you can place a bet in favor of North Korea being a BRICS member in about 5 years.
Wow. I just want to one quick question about Israel, Scott. Bibi Netanyahu, or I'm gonna stop calling him that. Netanyahu just actually disbanded his war cabinet. And also recently there was a statement made by the UN Human Rights Council that was very damning evidence that Israel, obviously, they said they're trying to exterminate the Palestinian people in that recent statement. I'll get into that a little bit later. But what do you think this means for Israel? Is Israel, or in particular Netanyahu's administration, falling apart?
Yes. I mean, this war cabinet was a compromise measure to allow Netanyahu to stay in power. The embarrassment that his government suffered at the hands of Hamas when they attacked Israel on October 7th was manifest. And so too was the embarrassment they suffered based upon their response so far. Netanyahu's government has been a failure across the board, but he created this compromise war cabinet that allowed the opposition to have a seat in order to justify him staying in power politically. And this is what it's all about. If you want to break down what's going on in between Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah, stop getting the complications of, two-state solution, one-state solution, this, that, and the other thing. It's about Netanyahu staying in power. That's all it is right now. And now that Benny Gantz has withdrawn, other members have withdrawn, the cabinet has collapsed. Now he's reformed it because Israel's not a dictatorship. The prime minister does not have exclusive authority to make decisions. There has to be a war cabinet. That's just the way Israel works. So he has to find people willing to sit down with him and make decisions regarding this war. Right now, he's able to assemble people from the far right. They're so bad. I don't know if you saw today, the Israeli spokesperson came out, or the Israeli defense spokesperson came out and said that Israel cannot defeat Hamas because Hamas is an ideology. And so any war that says our goal and objective is to defeat Hamas, it's not a militarily accomplished. And Netanyahu immediately came out and said, no, I've ordered you to defeat da-da-da-da-da. And he thought that maybe the military would fire the spokesperson, but the chief of staff came out and said, the spokesperson said that Hamas is an ideology, and we concur. It cannot be defeated. Netanyahu's lost the military. I mean, the military doesn't support this anymore. You have an opposition figure now, Lapid, who's coming out and saying that Israel needs to stop killing children in Gaza, that we need to apologize to the Palestinians. You're seeing Israel, an Israel capable of sustaining Netanyahu break apart. And so I think this is the beginning of the end of Benjamin Netanyahu. The question is he going to take down Israel with him? And if he goes to war against Hezbollah, he will have achieved the destruction of Israel, not just the defeat of Israel, but the physical destruction of Israel.
Because Hezbollah could defeat Israel on the battlefield.
100%. Hezbollah has equipped itself with tens of thousands of rockets and ballistic missiles, many of them of the most modern characteristics with precision-guided accuracy, long range. They can hit any target in Israel. And Hezbollah has done two things recently that should wake everybody up. One, they've flown drones over Israel that haven't been shot down. They just published one of those drone images that flew over the Haifa area. And the thing that shocked everybody is that this showed the most sensitive sites in Israel, and that Hezbollah knows where they are and can precisely target them. The other thing is that Hezbollah has recently been using new weapons that are destroying the Iron Dome system, and Israel can't do anything to stop it. So Hezbollah has put a marker on the table that we can destroy all of your missile defense systems, and then we know every place in Israel we want to hit, and we can hit them with any rocket we want. And Nasrallah gave a speech yesterday where he said, if there is a war with Israel, it's not going to be a limited exchange. It's going to be a full-on missile attack that'll last for days. And by the time we're done, there won't be a site in Israel that we haven't destroyed. We will destroy everything. And he also said that this isn't a fight that's going to be happening on the ground in southern Lebanon, that if they go to war, Hezbollah will take northern Israel and the Galilee. This means that Israel, normally we talk about Israel capturing the Golan Heights, Israel capturing the West Bank, Israel seizing Sinai. Hezbollah will seize northern Israel. Israel will lose the Galilee, lose northern Israel physically. Hezbollah will seize it from them. That's the reality of what a war with Hezbollah would look like. So anybody who's out there saying, no, it's time for Israel to stand up to Hezbollah, Israel can't stand up to Hezbollah.
That's very interesting. Do you see an end to this war before the elections? Dun, dun,
the question is Netanyahu. Can Netanyahu survive through the election? is the question. And how can he survive? If we push him into a corner because ultimately this is about Benjamin Netanyahu's political survival. It's not about anything else. And if we push him into a corner where the only out he sees is to attack Hezbollah, then I think Israel will be destroyed before the election. If we allow him to drag this thing out in perpetuity, it's impossible. Gaza, the world is just fed up with what he's done in Gaza, and so is his country. He can't sustain that. If I could simply say that by removing Netanyahu, we could guarantee the war ending, I would say then yes, I think we can see this war ending before the elections, because I don't think Netanyahu is going to survive through to the elections. I think he's finished as a politician. The problem is, what will the next Israeli government be able to accomplish? Will they be able? Is there enough political support in Israel today to accept a ceasefire? Or will a replacement government have no choice but to continue the failed policies of Netanyahu, that this war, this conflict has become something that is not attached solely to the survival of an Israeli political leader, but it's now attached to the existential survival of Israel. And so a follow-on government will have to continue this war. and that's it. If Israel goes to war against Hezbollah, then the war solves itself within a month. Israel can't survive. But if Israel avoids a conflict with Hezbollah, but another government comes in, another government coming in will have to be given time by everybody. You can't expect them to solve things instantly. There's a chance that this conflict could extend through the election, but it doesn't last much longer than that. This is a conflict that is not sustainable by Israel and by its supporter, the United States.
Very interesting. Last question for you, Scott. This is a good one from Sakudo. Can you ask Scott, is he aware that the DOD and intel agencies are using sites like 4chan as propaganda playgrounds? That's a good question.
It's a very good question. I don't have the definitive answer. What I can say is this. We work very closely with British intelligence, and we know that GCHQ, which is the guys that get involved in the cyber type stuff. And I think 4chan, again, I'm not an expert, but 4chan's like an internet-based communication system, something like that. 4chan, it's a website, or it's a way people communicate on the internet, I guess, right? Am I right on that?
I believe so.
I think it is, again, because you're talking to, ladies and gentlemen, go to a dictionary, open it up, and look up the word Luddite. Okay? Look at the photograph that they have of the person that they call Luddite. It's me. I am the least technologically savvy person in the world. So I'm thinking that 4chan is some sort of communication mechanism on the internet. It's a message board. Okay. And I think it was associated with conspiracy theories for a while, like Q, somebody called Q or a movement called Q used it. Again, that's my understanding. We know that GCHQ has units, organizations, institutions within their ranks whose job is to infiltrate these various groups. And they train themselves up. They take on a covert action, covert nature, and they go in there and they insinuate themselves in there to collect intelligence and to shape thought, to begin to take control of the narrative and move the narrative where they want. And GCHQ can do that globally. The U.S. Constitution, as much as it's been run roughshod over, still has some checks and balances that make it difficult for the United States to have such a sweeping program like that, I believe. But on individual basis, I know that law enforcement and intelligence collectors can get permission to go in and infiltrate communities and do things. And where we can't, I would bet a dime to a dollar that we go to GCHQ and get them to cover the gaps. So I would say that there's a 100% certainty that 4-channel communities have been infiltrated by the intelligence services of either the United States or its allies.
Scott, this is the last thing I promise. I showed everyone the video of when you were confronting the Senate and Joe Biden. This is when Joe Biden was still a senator. I'm sure you remember this. And I'm just curious, at that point in time when you were talking about like the weapons in Iraq, did you have any idea that this guy would go on to become president of the United States, like for reals?
Understand that meeting or event took place, I think, on September 3rd, 1998, September 3rd or September 4th. I had resigned in the middle of August of 1998. Prior to that, my job was either weapons inspector, which I had done for 7 years, or Marine intelligence officer, which I did for 7 years prior to that, or 6 years prior to that. I didn't interact with Congress. I didn't do this. I was, my level of my political commitment to that time was Ronald Reagan. That was it. I was a Reagan Republican. I didn't look at domestic issues. I looked at the enemy. I tried to do the job I was given. I wasn't somebody out there fighting the good fight for social justice causes and all this kind of stuff. I didn't understand what I was getting involved in. To give you an example, they sent me a request. They said, we want you to come and testify. Now, the original request would have me testify together with Madeleine Albright, the Secretary of State, and I think Cohen was the Secretary of Defense at the time. I'm sitting there going, guys, I was a major in the Marine Corps. Now, I know I was a weapons inspector and all this stuff, but that's a Secretary of State and a Secretary of Defense. You want me to come and do this? They said, yeah, because I said, I know who they are. I've worked with them. And I'm intimately familiar with the policies, and I know they're lying through their teeth. So you want me to come to the Senate with them on the stage and call them liars and prove it? He said, yes. I said, okay, sign me up, baby. But I thought it was because they wanted the truth. No, they didn't want the truth. It was politics. These were the Republicans. Trent Lott, the Senate Majority Leader, wanted to embarrass the Clinton administration. That was all it was about. Joe Biden was a big Senate Democrat. Joe Biden didn't want this hearing to take place. Joe Biden said, we're shutting this hearing down, which they did through a procedural thing. He said, first of all, he said, Albright and Cohen aren't going to appear on stage with Ritter. They have other things to do, so we don't need to hold this hearing. And Trent Lott said, no, we're going to have Ritter come up anyways. And he said, well, no, then we're going to not allow this through Parliament because there's certain things that have to be done. And Trent Lott, what I found out in the history, the first time in the history of the U.S. Senate, and I didn't know this at the time, he suspended the Senate and then he brought it back into order, thereby resetting some sort of parliamentary clock. And then, so I drive up and I'm like, I'm going to testify for the U.S. Senate. It's a historical event. I'm going to testify for a joint committee of the Foreign Relations and the Armed Services. It's never happened before in history. I'm just moving on thinking, great. I'm not doing that, but I'm professionally focused. Okay, I'm going to answer the questions. I'm ready. But I wasn't thinking about the political aspects. I was just going to testify before a joint hearing of the Senate. They say, Scott, Trent Lott wants to see you. I'm like, okay. So I go up. Trent Lott, we get the photograph taken, me and Trent Lott. Hey, I got it, signed photograph. Scott, you're a great American. Photograph. And then Trent says, I'm going to walk you into the Senate. I'm thinking, wow, Senate Majority Leader's going to walk me into the Senate. He was walking me into the Senate to send a signal to the Democrats that he's in control. And Biden's sitting there watching this thing going, you son of a bitch. He was just seething about it. So I come up and I'm shaking. Trent Lott moves around and I shake all the Republican hands. And I'm like, what about the Democrats? No, I don't get to shake any Democrat hands. I'm like, well, that's sort of unfair, but Trent Lott leaves and I sit down and it begins. Biden was so furious at me because he thought that I was working with Trent Lott, that I was a Republican. He didn't understand that I wasn't there to be politicized. I was there to tell the truth. Biden, the last thing Biden wanted was the truth to be told. He didn't want me there. He tried to stop me from being there. And then he perceived me as being politicized. And so he attacked me. To be honest, prior to him speaking, I didn't know who the hell Joe Biden was. I just knew he was a senator from Delaware. I knew that he was a senator from Delaware. I had zero interaction with the guy. As soon as he opened his mouth and speaking, I despised the man and everything he stood for. I've hated him ever since. We met and he blew it. I mean, people don't realize how much pushback there was against Joe Biden that day. Even the Washington Post wrote an op-ed that said he was wrong for that. He had to apologize. He wrote up an op-ed in the Washington Post apologizing, and then he invited me back to his office. And so a couple of weeks later, I went back and met with him one-on-one in his office. And we had a meeting for like 40, 45 minutes. Which if you're a U.S. Senator, it's a long time. We had a very detailed conversation. He wrote me a letter afterwards, thanking me for coming in, talking in. And at the bottom, he said, this issue hasn't gone away. If you ever can be of service, or if I need you or something like that, don't be afraid to call me and all that stuff. So I had that letter. And now 2002, we're getting ready to go to war. And Biden is the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. It's a joint chair at the time. I think he chaired it with Senator Lugar from Indiana. And I'm sitting there saying, you guys got to have a hearing. You got to have a hearing about Iraq, about weapons of mass destruction. And I had gone around all the Senate knocking on doors saying you got to have hearings. And I remember I wanted to get Chuck Hagel, a Republican from Nebraska, and John Kerry from Massachusetts together because they were both military guys, Vietnam War guys, understand the consequences of war. And I wanted to get them together. So I went and met with Hagel, and he said, man, I can't get ahead of because this is an election. That was an earlier meeting. This is what he said. I can't do this by myself. I need somebody with me. I called up Kerry. I said, Hagel needs an ally for this. And Kerry said, put it in writing, put your arguments in writing. So I wrote an article for Arms Control Today, the preeminent arms control journal. And they published it. The case for the qualitative disarmament of Iraq, explaining exactly how Iraq was disarmed. By the way, that article I published in June of 2000, and the CIA, when they published their assessment afterwards, it said they were all wrong. This is exactly the article I wrote. My arguments were always technically sound correct, but I did that. They ignored me. Kerry wouldn't talk to me. Hagel wouldn't talk to me. Biden ignored. Biden sent his chief of staff to meet with me. He called me a traitor to my face. He said, you've committed treason writing this article. And we were alone in a room. And I said, if you call me that one more time, only one person's walking out of this room. And I know who it's going to be. It ain't going to be you. Don't you ever question my patriotism. And he apologized, but he was Joe Biden's man. He attacked me. And then he said, ultimately, Biden's not going to go for this. I reminded Biden of the letter he wrote me. He wouldn't go for it. Joe Biden is a cowardly piece of manure. I knew that in 2000. I knew that in 1999. I knew that in 2000. I knew that in 2002. He's a liar. He was briefed in detail. I briefed him in person, and I briefed his chief of staff. He knew all the facts that turned out to be 100% correct. Biden was never interested in the truth. He was always interested in promoting this war, this fantasy war that he had out there. And at that point in time, I realized that this guy was doing it because he wanted to be president of the United States. And that's when I realized that, that's what he wanted to do. I never thought the American people would elect this man, especially after the Iraq war fiasco, where it was clear that he was a warmonger, a liar who promoted the lies, etc. Why in God's name people voted for him in 2020? I know why, Donald Trump. But you got what you paid for, ladies and gentlemen. This is the worst human being possible when his brain is working. And now his brain's not working, which actually allows me to have a little bit of sympathy for him, because I can't hate somebody who has dementia. I can't hate somebody with Alzheimer's. And he's a sick man. But when he was healthy, I despised him. And I knew he wanted to be president. And there was just no way I thought the American people would fall for this. I was shocked when Barack Obama brought him in as the vice president. I thought that was, but it was a brilliant move on Obama's part, because Biden, what I also found out is he is the establishment. He is the personification of the establishment. And the establishment is very powerful. The establishment's more powerful than the American people. And it's a sad state of affairs. I didn't know who he was. The short answer to your question is when he first talked to me like that, I didn't know he was just a mean guy up there, saying really stupid things. But once I got to know the guy, I learned to despise him.
Scott Ritter. Scott, thank you so much for your time. And I hope you get to cool off there, because it is hot all over the East Coast, I think.
All right. Thanks, Sabby. Thanks for having me.
All righty. Bye. All right, guys, that was Scott Ritter. Lots of things said there. You guys know, if those of you who watch me all the time, you know how we'll do this. We'll clip all the stories from today's show, so you'll get to have the clips as well. And then in reference to the interview, we'll clip the full interview, and then there'll be certain parts of the interview that we'll also clip as separate stories that you can go to. So like if you just want to go straight to the Russia section, we'll have a clip for that. We'll have one for Israel. And I think we're going to have one for that Joe Biden story too, because that one is very interesting. But what is going on, fam? What is going on? Let's go to some of the comments here. We have 3 other stories I do want to get to as well. So let's go ahead and get to the comments first. Thank you. Yvonne J says Scott Ritter is somewhat like the male representation of Sabby. It's interesting. I don't know, man. A little bit more brave than me, though. I've never been in the military, and he has got an opportunity to speak to some pretty powerful people, right? Thank you for the super chat, Gene. Are behind the scenes people with BRICS bankrupting the USA moving on? I think we did talk a little bit about BRICS in that discussion. I hope that answered your question. Thank you, Sam. Scott, to be fair, you can't ask the young or others to serve the country when things are so bleak and corrupt. We don't have a functioning government. Thank you for that. Thank you, Baby Ethernet. With the rise of independent media, the U.S. government and MSM can no longer brainwash the youth into sacrificing themselves for U.S. hegemony. I agree. Thank you, Raphael. Sir, I was a U.S. Marine too for 10 years. You are legit. And thank you, Stephanie. Popular weight loss drug like Ozempic, Wegovy, I don't know, I've never heard of these, cost $1,349 in the US. In Israel, it cost $160. Interesting. Those things always concern me. I don't think that's the best way to try to lose weight. Like I get worried when people tell me that they're using some type of weight loss drug, Let's bring up that comment from Roger. Thank you. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Scott, on one hand, tried to shame Zoomers for not serving and put their life on the land for a country that's hostile to them, then spent the next 15 minutes dismantling his own argument by going into a whole soliloquy of how they're treated when they come back from war after being propagandized into it. I had a whole rebuttal ready, but he rebutted for me. You're amazingly dexterous. Wow, Fat Boys enlisted. Joking. He's talking about the Fat Boys, the rap group.